Admiral Elias Varn stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the massive tactical display that filled the command center wall. The room was silent. Not tense. Not chaotic. Just silent. The kind of silence that only existed when everyone present understood that history was about to change, and no one yet knew how. A digital clock hovered above the display. 2:59. It began counting down. No one had asked why. No one had to. Across the vast projection of space, thousands of red markers moved in perfect formation toward the inner system. Each one represented a warship, alien, massive, and fully armed. Together they formed a wall. A moving, unstoppable wall of metal, energy, and intent. Lieutenant Armin Reyes swallowed hard at his station. Final count confirmed, Admiral, he said, his voice steady only because he forced it to be. Enemy fleet now exceeds 11,000 vessels. No reaction from Varn. Composition? The Admiral asked quietly. Reyes glanced at the data stream. Vorath dreadnoughts at the center. Zalari battle cruisers on the flanks. Krell hive carriers deploying strike swarms. Support vessels forming a layered defensive grid. The pause. Then more quietly, they brought everything. A few officers exchanged brief looks. No one spoke. They all knew what that meant. This was not a raid. Not a show of force. Not a warning. This was extermination. On the far side of the command deck, Commander Lyra Chin stepped closer to the central table, her eyes scanning the projected trajectories. They'll reach Mars orbit in 43 minutes, she said. Outer defense platforms will engage, but, she hesitated. But it won't matter, Reyes finished under his breath. Varn turned slightly, just enough for the room to feel his attention shift. It will matter, he said. His tone wasn't louder. It didn't need to be. The room stilled again. Chen nodded once and continued, adjusting her tone. Yes, sir. They'll slow the advance. Buy time. The word hung in the air. Everyone glanced, almost instinctively, at the clock. 2:17. Still counting down. Still unexplained. Still wrong. Reyes leaned closer to his console, lowering his voice. Sir, with respect, we've run every scenario. Even with full defensive output, we can't stop them at Mars. If they break through, they will break through, Varn said. No hesitation. No illusion. That, more than anything, unsettled the room. Chen frowned slightly. Then Earth orbit. They will reach Earth orbit. Another statement. Not a prediction. A certainty. A quiet ripple moved through the command center. Not panic. Something worse. Acceptance. Reyes felt it settle into his chest like weight. Then, he started, then stopped himself. He didn't want to say it. No one did. But someone had to. Then what's the plan? The question lingered. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the soft hum of systems and the steady, merciless ticking of the countdown. 1:48. Varn finally turned. Not fully, just enough for his face to be visible in the glow of the tactical display. He didn't look afraid. He didn't look desperate. If anything, he looked tired. But beneath that, something else. Something colder. You're looking at it, he said. Reyes blinked. Sir? Varn stepped forward, closer to the display, studying the incoming fleet as if he were observing a storm he had already measured. They believe this is the final battle, he continued. That they've brought enough force to end us in one decisive strike. Chin crossed her arms slightly. With respect, sir, they're not wrong. A faint smile touched the corner of Varn's mouth. No, he said. They are. The room went still again. Reyes stared at him. Admiral, 11,000 ships. Are exactly where we need them. That did it. Now the silence wasn't just tension. It was confusion. Chin stepped closer. Sir, are you saying this is intentional? Varn didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked back at the clock. 1:12. His gaze lingered there, then returned to the fleet. For 50 years, he said slowly, they've tested us. The room listened. Every voice gone. Every movement stopped. They sent smaller fleets first. Probes. Raids. Enforcement actions. His voice remained calm, almost reflective. Each time, they expected us to break. Reyes nodded faintly. Everyone knew the history. We didn't, Varn continued. We adapted. Chin narrowed her eyes slightly. Adapted, how? Another pause. Not hesitation. Varn looked at her, then at Reyes, then at the rest of the command staff. You'll understand soon enough. That didn't help. If anything, it made the air heavier. Reyes exhaled slowly. Sir, with all due respect, people down there are looking at those ships right now. Civilians. Colonies. If we're missing something, we're not missing anything, Varn said. His voice was firmer now. Grounded. Final. They are. The beat. No one spoke. The Admiral turned back to the display, watching the red tide advance. Then almost to himself. In exactly 1 minute, he said, the coalition will realize something very important. Reyes felt his throat tighten. And what's that, sir? Varn didn't look at him. Didn't look at anyone. He watched the fleet. He watched the clock. 0:52. And then he said quietly, that they didn't come here to win. The words landed like impact. Reyes stared at the display again. At the thousands of ships. At the unstoppable force. At the certainty of destruction. And for the first time, something didn't add up. The clock kept ticking. 0:41. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface of everything they thought they understood, something was waiting. The first alien ships crossed Neptune's orbit without slowing. From Earth Defense Command, they appeared as faint points of light at the edge of the system, small, almost insignificant. But the tactical overlays told the truth. Each dot was a war machine large enough to erase continents. Long-range sensors confirm full coalition alignment. Lieutenant Reyes reported, his voice quieter now, not from fear, but from the sheer scale of what he was reading. They're not spreading out. They're compressing into a unified assault vector. Commander Chin frowned. That's not standard doctrine. No, Varn said calmly. It's not. On the display, the formation tightened. Thousands of ships adjusting position with mechanical precision, their trajectories converging into a single advancing front. A wall. Not a fleet. A wall. They're not here to probe defenses, Chin said slowly. They're here to overwhelm them. Reyes nodded. Every ship is within support range of the others. Shield harmonics overlapping. Weapons arrays synchronized. If we hit one, we hit all of them. And if we miss? Chin asked. Reyes didn't answer. He didn't need to. The projection shifted, zooming inward. The Vorath dreadnoughts became visible first. Massive. Angular. Brutal. Each one was kilometers long, layered with armor that had survived orbital bombardments on a dozen worlds. Their primary cannons, long, spinal weapons that glowed faintly even at rest, were designed to fracture planetary crust. Behind them, the Zalari cruisers moved like predators, sleek and fast, their hulls reflecting starlight in shifting patterns. They carried precision weapons, cutting beams, surgical strikes, tools designed not just to destroy, but to dismantle. And surrounding everything, hundreds of hive carriers, each one pulsing with life, their surfaces crawling with launch ports. Swarms of smaller craft moved around them like insects, constantly shifting, constantly multiplying. They've integrated all 13 species into a single combat formation, Chin said. That's never happened before. Reyes glanced at her. It's not supposed to be possible. No, she replied. It isn't. Varn said nothing. On the far side of the command center, another officer spoke up. Admiral, incoming transmission. Everyone turned. The screen flickered. Then stabilized. Admiral Corvith of the Coalition filled the display. He was enormous. Even through the projection, his presence felt heavy, scaled skin dark as stone, eyes glowing with a deep, predatory red. Behind him stood representatives of the other species, silent, watching. A united front. A final statement. Humans of Earth, Corvith began. His voice echoed through the command center, translated but still carrying a deep, grinding resonance, like shifting rock. You have resisted coalition authority for the last time. Reyes clenched his jaw. Corvith continued, unhurried. For 5 decades, you have defied integration. You have rejected law. You have resisted correction. The alien's eyes narrowed slightly. This ends now. The tactical display remained visible beside him, the red wave of ships still advancing. You face the combined strength of 13 civilizations, Corvith said. Over 11,000 warships. Full industrial backing. Total command integration. The pause. Not for effect. For certainty. There will be no retreat. No negotiation. No delay. Chen folded her arms tightly. Corvith leaned forward slightly. You will surrender your fleets. Your technology. Your governance. His voice hardened. Or you will be erased. Silence followed. No dramatic music. No alarms. Just the hum of systems and the quiet, relentless ticking of the clock. 029. Reyes looked at it again. Then back at the alien. Corvith's gaze shifted, as if looking directly at Varn. Your resistance has been instructive, he said, but ultimately meaningless. Behind him, one of the Zalari commanders stepped forward slightly, its thin, metallic voice cutting in. Your tactics have not evolved. Your technology remains inferior. Your species lacks unity. Another voice, Krell, distorted and layered, added. You survive only because we allowed it. Corvith raised a hand, silencing them. Observe, he said. The display shifted again. A simulation appeared, Earth's defenses mapped out in precise detail. Orbital stations. Defense grids. Fleet positions. Every asset. Every weakness. Every angle of attack. They studied us, Reyes whispered. Chen shook her head slowly. No, they dissected us. Corvith's voice returned. In 40 minutes, your outer defenses will fall. In 60, your fleet will be destroyed. Within 2 hours. He stopped. Then said it clearly. Your world will belong to us. The transmission ended. The screen returned to the tactical display. No one spoke. Not immediately. They're right. The voice came from one of the junior officers. Too quiet to challenge. Too honest to ignore. Reyes didn't look at him. Because part of him agreed. Every number. Every projection. Every simulation. They all said the same thing. This was unwinnable. Chen exhaled slowly. They mapped everything. They know our fleet composition, our defensive ranges, even our fallback routes. Reyes added quietly, they know exactly how we fight. Varn finally moved again. Just a step. But it drew every eye. Of course they do, he said. No anger. No denial. Just acknowledgement. They've been watching us for 50 years. Chen looked at him carefully. Then how? Varn raised a hand slightly. Not to interrupt. To stop the question before it formed. His eyes returned to the clock. 011. Reyes felt his pulse rise. Something was coming. Something they didn't understand. And the Admiral, he wasn't reacting to the threat. He was waiting for something else. The fleet advanced. Closer. Closer. Unstoppable. The red markers filled more of the display now, swallowing distance, swallowing time. Chen stepped closer to Varn. Sir, if this is a trap. It is, he said. She froze. Reyes looked up sharply. A trap, he repeated. Varn nodded once. Yes. Reyes stared at the screen again. At the 11,000 ships. At the unstoppable force. At the certainty of annihilation. Then, he said slowly, they're already inside it. Varn's eyes didn't leave the display. Exactly. The clock reached 003. Reyes held his breath. 02. The fleet surged forward. 01. And Admiral Varn whispered, they just don't know it yet. The clock hit 0. Nothing happened. No explosion. No sudden shift in the fleet. No visible change at all. For a brief, disorienting second, the command center remained exactly the same. Screens glowing, systems humming, the enemy still advancing. Lieutenant Reyes blinked. That's it, he said under his breath. Commander Chen didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the display. "Admiral," she began carefully, "we just reached 0. Varn didn't answer. He was watching something else. Not the fleet. Not the display. A small, secondary panel, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, flickered to life beside his station. A single line of text appeared. Prometheus Protocol. Initialization confirmed. Reyes didn't see it. Chen did. Her eyes narrowed. "Sir?" Varn stepped forward. "Status," he said quietly. Across the room, a new voice answered. "Phase 1 complete." Everyone turned. Dr. Elias Cade stood at the rear of the command center, half in shadow, a tablet in his hand. He hadn't been there a moment ago, or if he had, no one had noticed him. He didn't wear a uniform. Just a dark coat, sleeves rolled, eyes tired and sharp at the same time. Reyes frowned. "Who?" Chen cut him off softly. "Dr. Cade." Recognition hit. The room shifted. Not physically, but in weight. There were names everyone in command knew. Names that didn't appear in briefings. Names that existed, quietly. Cade was one of them. "Admiral," Cade said, stepping forward, "all transmitters are synchronized. Signal propagation stable across the entire fleet." Reyes stared at him. "Transmitters?" Cade didn't look at him. He looked at Varn. "We're in," he said. The pause. "Good," Varn replied. Chen stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. "Sir, what exactly just initialized?" Varn turned slightly. Not to her. To the entire room. "You've all seen their fleet," he said. "Their numbers. Their coordination. Their technology." No one disagreed. "They built their strength on integration," he continued. "Shared systems. Unified command networks. Interlinked communication structures." Reyes nodded faintly. "That's what makes them unstoppable." Varn looked at him. "Does it?" Reyes hesitated. "Yes." Cade smiled slightly. "No," he said. The word landed softly. "But it changed everything." Chen crossed her arms. "Then what does it make them?" Cade stepped forward, tapping his tablet once. The main display flickered. The tactical view of the fleet didn't disappear. It changed. Layers appeared. Invisible layers. Streams of data. Connections. Lines, thousands of them, linking ship to ship, system to system. The web. A nervous system. "This," Cade said, "is how they fight." Reyes stared at it. Every ship connected. Every system talking. Every command flowing instantly across the network. 13 species, Cade continued. 13 different technologies. Different languages. Different command structures. Chen nodded slowly. "That's why they use translation cores." "Exactly," Cade said. "They don't just communicate. They depend on it." He zoomed in. One ship. Then another. Then 10. Each one feeding data into the others. "Navigation," he said. "Weapons targeting. Shield harmonics. Fleet positioning. Every decision, shared." Reyes frowned. "That makes them faster." Cade looked at him. "It makes them connected." "The beat. And anything connected," he added quietly, "can be understood." The room went still. Chen's eyes sharpened. Understood? Or controlled? Cade didn't answer directly. He looked at Varn. The Admiral gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Cade tapped the tablet again. The display shifted once more. Now the data streams changed color. Red, turning to blue. One by one. Not all at once. Gradually. Like an infection. Reyes felt his chest tighten. "What is that?" Cade's voice was calm. "Phase 1. Chen stepped closer to the display. "You're mapping them." "No," Cade said. A small pause. "We already mapped them." Silence. Reyes stared at him. "Then what are we doing?" Cade looked at the fleet. At the 11,000 ships moving closer. At the perfect formation. "At this point," he said, "they're mapping themselves." The words didn't fully land. "Not yet." Chen shook her head slightly. "That doesn't make sense." Cade smiled faintly. "It will." Reyes glanced back at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was still advancing. Still perfect. Still unstoppable. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything felt different. Sir, Reyes said slowly, if this protocol is active, why aren't we seeing any effect? Varn answered this time. Because they aren't supposed to see it. Chen looked at him sharply. Then when they're close enough, Varn said. How close? Reyes asked. Varn's eyes returned to the display. To Mars orbit. To the point where the fleet would cross into full engagement range. Close enough, he said, that it's too late to turn around. The room fell quiet again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. Before it had been fear. But it was something else. Something building. Chen exhaled slowly. You're letting them advance. Yes. You're letting them think they're winning. Yes. Reyes stared at the display again. At the unstoppable force. At the certainty of destruction. Because they are, he said. Cade glanced at him. From their perspective, he said. The beat. But that's the important part. Reyes looked between them. Sir, how long has this been in development? Varn didn't answer immediately. He watched the fleet. Then said quietly, long enough. Chen narrowed her eyes. That's not an answer. No, Varn agreed. It's not. He turned slightly, just enough for his voice to carry across the entire command center. For 50 years, he said. The room froze. Reyes felt it hit like impact. 50? He repeated. Cade nodded once. Every encounter, he said. Every battle. Every piece of technology they left behind. Chen whispered, we were studying them. Cade shook his head. No, he said. The pause. But we were learning how to become them. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. The fleet moved closer. Mars orbit approaching. The data streams on the display continued shifting. More red turning blue. Slowly. Quietly. Unnoticed. Reyes swallowed. And they still don't know? Cade looked at the screen. At the perfect formation. At the flawless coordination. At the unstoppable advance. No, he said. Then added. That's the point. Varn stepped forward again, his voice calm, steady, final. Prepare for Phase 2. Chen's eyes flicked to him. What happens in Phase 2? Varn didn't look away from the fleet. They start to notice. The beat. And by the time they understand. He paused. The faintest hint of something cold passing through his expression. They won't be able to stop it. Far from Earth. Far from the command center, the fleet displays, the countdown. The plan was already in motion. Varash Prime, Coalition Shipyard World. Agent Kale did not look human. He hadn't for 23 years. His skin was layered in scaled patterns, his eyes adapted to the dim, green-tinted atmosphere of Varash Prime. Even his breathing matched the rhythm of the native species. To everyone around him, he was one of them. A loyal technician in the largest shipyard in the sector. Above him, massive skeletal frames of unfinished warships stretched into the sky, suspended in magnetic scaffolds. Dreadnought hulls, kilometers long, still incomplete but already terrifying. Thousands of workers moved around them. None of them noticed Kale. No one ever did. He reached into a maintenance panel and adjusted a cluster of quantum relays. A small, silent device, no larger than his palm, slid into place. It locked with a soft click. Invisible. Undetectable. Final. Kale paused. For just a second. 23 years. One life, abandoned. One identity erased. For this moment. He looked at his wrist. A small display flickered. Phase 2 standby. Kale exhaled slowly. Then spoke, quietly into a hidden channel. Ghost Node 7, he whispered. Charge is set. Awaiting signal. No reply. There never was. Zalari homeworld, orbital defense ring. Agent Lyra Voss stood at the edge of a control platform, watching the stars through a transparent shield. Around her, Zalari officers monitored planetary defenses, their tall, silver forms moving with quiet precision. She had lived among them for 17 years. Learned their language. their customs, their patterns. She knew how they thought, which meant she knew exactly what they would never suspect. Her console displayed routine diagnostics, shield calibrations, weapon alignment, energy distribution. All normal, all perfect. She tapped a sequence. Just a slight adjustment, a reroute, a delay inserted so small it wouldn't trigger any alert. Then another, and another. The system accepted the changes without question, because they looked correct, because they matched expected behavior, because the system trusted itself. Lyra's fingers paused. Her screen flickered. Phase 2 standby. Her pulse quickened. 17 years. Waiting. Watching. Pretending. Almost over. She leaned closer to the console and spoke softly. Ghost Node 12 ready. Still no reply. Still no confirmation. Only silence. Asteroid belt, Sector K-19. Nothing moved. No signals. No heat signatures. No detectable mass. Just empty space. And yet, something was there. Captain Darius Hale sat in darkness, surrounded by systems that emitted no light beyond the faint glow of internal displays. His ship did not officially exist. No registry. No transponder. No presence. To collision sensors. It wasn't there. Behind him, a crew of 200 waited in absolute silence. No idle chatter. No unnecessary movement. Just breath. And readiness. Hale stared at the tactical projection. The enemy fleet, still distant. Still advancing. Range? He asked quietly. Still outside detection threshold, his officer replied. Hale nodded once. Maintained silence. They had been here for 6 hours. Waiting. Watching. Invisible. And they were not alone. Across the asteroid belt, behind the moons of Jupiter, in the shadow of Saturn's rings, hundreds of ships just like his drifted in perfect stillness. A second fleet. Unseen. Uncounted. Unknown. Hale's console flickered. Phase 2 standby. He smiled faintly. About time, he murmured. Then into a secure channel. Ghost fleet units, confirm readiness. Replies came. One after another. Quiet. Controlled. Absolute. Ghost 1 ready. Ghost 7 ready. Ghost 12 ready. Ghost 31 ready. Dozens. Then hundreds. A fleet that did not exist. Now awake. Earth, subsurface command complex. Deep beneath the planet's surface. Far below any structure visible from orbit, the Prometheus array pulsed to life. Hundreds of quantum cores, linked across Earth, Luna, Mars, and hidden stations, began operating in perfect synchronization. Dr. Cade stood at the center of it all. Watching. Monitoring. Controlling. Streams of alien data flowed across his displays. Every ship. Every system. Every connection. Understood. And now, being rewritten. Signal stability holding, one technician reported. Propagation increasing, said another. Coalition networks are amplifying the transmission on their own. Cade nodded. Of course they were. That was the design. They're helping us, a third technician whispered, almost in disbelief. Cade didn't look away from the screen. Yes, he said. They always were. He adjusted a control. The blue signals spread faster. Not aggressively. Not violently. Quietly. Like thought. Earth Defense Command. Back in orbit, Admiral Varn stood before the tactical display. Chen watched as new data began appearing, streams she hadn't seen before. Sir, what am I looking at? Varn didn't answer. Cade's voice came through the system. All ghost nodes are in position. Fleet assets are standing by. Network infiltration at 38% and climbing. Reyes turned sharply. 38% of what? Cade replied calmly. Of everything. The room went still. Chin stared at the display. At the fleet. At the connections. At the invisible war already being fought. This isn't a single operation, she said slowly. Varn shook his head. No. Reyes swallowed. This is the whole system. Yes. The pause. Then Chen asked the question that had been building since the countdown ended. How long have we been doing this? Varn looked at the approaching fleet. At the 11,000 ships. At the perfect formation. At the enemy that believed it was winning. Since the first time they came. Silence. Heavy. Understanding beginning to form. Reyes whispered, almost to himself. This wasn't built for today. Varn's voice was quiet. No. Today is just when we use it. The tactical display shifted again. Mars orbit approaching. The fleet closing in. Closer. Closer. Exactly where they wanted them. Chen exhaled slowly. They walked into it. Varn nodded once. They were always going to. The beat. Prepare for Phase 3. Reyes looked at the screen. At the unstoppable enemy. At the invisible network wrapping around them. At the hidden fleet waiting in silence. What happens in Phase 3? He asked. Varn's eyes didn't move. They start losing control. The coalition fleet crossed Mars orbit in perfect formation. From their perspective, everything was going exactly as planned. Coalition flagship, command bridge. Admiral Corvith stood at the center of his bridge, towering over the tactical display. Before him, the battle unfolded with mathematical precision. Human defense platforms fired. Coalition ships advanced. The outcome was not in doubt. Outer defenses collapsing on schedule, reported a Zalari officer. Human resistance is within projected parameters. Corvith nodded once. Expected. The display zoomed in. Mars orbital platforms, once heavily armed and coordinated, now flickered under sustained bombardment. One by one they failed. Explosions bloomed silently in space. Fragments drifted. The line broke. They are committing their fighters too early, another officer observed. Predictable. Corvitha's lip curled slightly. They always do. Across the display, human ships darted between the larger coalition vessels. Fast, aggressive, desperate. They struck hard. Then withdrew. Again. And again. But it didn't matter. There were too many coalition ships. Too much firepower. They are fighting like cornered animals, said the Krell commander, its layered voice echoing faintly. Instinctive. Inefficient. Corvith folded his hands behind his back. They are fighting like they always have, he corrected. And it has never been enough. A nearby technician spoke up. Admiral, minor anomalies detected in communication routing. Likely interference from human systems. Corvith didn't even look at him. Filter it out. Yes, Admiral. The warning vanished. Ignored. Dismissed. Battle zone, Mars perimeter. Colonel Ishan Malik watched the final defense platform break apart in front of him. Platform 12 is gone, his comm officer said quietly. Malik nodded. He didn't react. Didn't curse. Didn't panic. He simply looked at the tactical overlay. At the advancing red wave. At the thinning line of blue. Order remaining units to fall back, he said. His officer hesitated. Sir, that leaves the corridor open. Yes, Malik replied. Another explosion lit up the void. Execute. The command went out. Human ships disengaged. Retreated. Fell back toward the inner system. To the coalition, it looked like defeat. To Malik, it looked like timing. He switched to a secure channel. Defense line broken as planned, he said. The pause. Proceeding to phase alignment. Coalition flagship. Corvith watched the retreat with satisfaction. They're collapsing faster than predicted, said the Zalari officer. Fear accelerates inefficiency, Corvith replied. The display zoomed out again. The coalition fleet moved forward, unstoppable, coordinated, flawless. They're falling back to Earth, another officer said. Attempting last-line defense. Corvith nodded. Good. He stepped forward slightly. Open a system-wide broadcast. The bridge stilled. Moments later, the transmission activated. Earth Defense Command, receiving signal. The main screen flickered. Corvith appeared again. Larger this time. Closer. More certain. Humans of Earth, he began. His voice carried across every channel. Every station. Every ship. Every colony listening. Your outer defenses have failed. No one in the command center responded. They didn't need to. They had seen it. You have fought with determination, Corvith continued. But determination is not enough. Reyes clenched his fist slightly. Chin didn't move. Varn watched. Silent. You face the full strength of the coalition, Corvith said. You cannot win. The pause. Deliberate. Controlled. This is your final opportunity. The display shifted. Terms appeared. Simple. Absolute. Surrender your fleets. Surrender your systems. Surrender your authority. Corvith leaned forward slightly. And you may continue to exist. Silence filled the command center. Refuse. His eyes narrowed. And we will take your world apart piece by piece until nothing remains. The transmission ended. Coalition flagship. Corvith turned away from the screen. They will refuse, the Krell commander said. Yes, Corvith replied. Then why offer terms? Corvith looked back at the tactical display. At the retreating human fleet. At the broken defenses. At this stage, he said, it is not about outcome. The beat. It is about demonstration. The Zalari officer tilted its head slightly. Of what? Corvith's voice hardened. Of consequence. Earth Defense Command. The silence after the transmission lingered. Reyes exhaled slowly. He really believes it. Chin nodded faintly. He has no reason not to. All data supported him. All visuals confirmed it. All outcomes pointed one way. Varn finally spoke. Status. Cade's voice responded immediately. Network integration at 62%. Reyes blinked. 62. Chen turned sharply. That fast? They're accelerating it themselves, Cade said. Every communication. Every command. Every coordination signal. They're feeding the system. Reyes stared at the display again. At the perfect fleet. At the unstoppable advance. They're helping us more the closer they get. Yes, Cade said. Varn nodded slightly. Good. Chin looked at him. Sir? Once they realize something's wrong. They won't, Varn said. Not in time. The pause. Prepare response. Reyes looked at him. To the ultimatum? Yes. Chin frowned slightly. What do we tell them? Varn stepped forward. His eyes locked on the display. On Corvith's flagship. On the center of the enemy formation. Venice? Tell them no. Reyes almost smiled. Almost. Chin crossed her arms. Just no. Varn's voice was calm. Make it clear. The beat. Humanity does not surrender. The message was transmitted. Across the system. Across the fleet. Across every coalition ship. Coalition flagship. Corvith received it seconds later. He read it once. Then again. Then dismissed it. As expected, he said. No anger. No surprise. Just confirmation. Begin final assault formation. The fleet shifted again. Weapons charging. Shields aligning. Targeting systems locking onto Earth. The final stage. The inevitable conclusion. Behind him, a technician hesitated. Admiral, I am detecting increased anomalies in. Corvith didn't turn. Later. Yes, Admiral. The warning faded. Ignored. Earth Defense Command. Cade's voice cut through the silence. Network integration at 79%. Reyes felt his pulse rise. Chin leaned forward. How much longer? Cade answered calmly. Not long. Varn looked at the display. At the enemy. At the perfect formation. At the absolute confidence. Then he said quietly, they still think they're winning. The beat. Good. The coalition fleet entered inner system engagement range. From Earth. It looked like the end. Orbit of Mars, aftermath zone. The battlefield was silent now. Where dozens of defense platforms had once stood, only debris remained. Twisted metal, broken systems, fragments drifting slowly into darkness. Colonel Malik watched it all from his command ship. Final platform destroyed, his officer confirmed. Malik nodded. No emotion. No reaction. Just a single command. Fall back. The last human ships in the sector disengaged, turning toward Earth. Behind them, nothing remained. To the coalition, Mars was secure. To Malik, the door had opened exactly as intended. He switched channels again. Outer defense is gone, he reported. Advancing to phase collapse. Coalition fleet, advancing formation. They are retreating. Corvith didn't need to be told. He could see it. The blue markers on the display, human ships, were pulling back in disorganized clusters, their formation broken, their numbers thinning. They've abandoned Mars, said the Zalari officer. Of course they have, Corvith replied. They are consolidating at Earth, another added. Attempting final defense. Corvith allowed himself a small, cold satisfaction. They believe they still have a chance. The Krell commander's voice layered in. They do not. No, Corvith agreed. They do not. The fleet surged forward. Faster now. More aggressive. No caution left. No reason for it. The outcome was already decided. Earth Defense Command. Reyes watched the retreat feed in real time. Ships blinking out. Signals lost. Positions collapsing. We're losing them, he said quietly. Chin didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on another panel. The network map. The one Cade had shown them. The one that now covered nearly the entire display. Integration at 91%, Cade reported. Reyes looked up. 91. Chen's voice was low. That's everything. Almost, Cade corrected. Reyes turned back to the tactical display. To the red wave closing in. Sir, he said, barely above a whisper, if this doesn't work. Varn cut him off. It will. No hesitation. No doubt. That certainty was the only thing holding the room together. Chin stepped closer. They're accelerating, she said. They've abandoned defensive spacing. Their entire fleet is compressing toward Earth. Cade responded instantly. Good. Reyes stared at him. Good. They're increasing communication density, Cade explained. More signals. More data. More connections. Chin understood first. They're feeding the system faster. Yes. Reyes looked back at the display. At the unstoppable advance. They're walking deeper into it. Varn nodded. Exactly. Civilian channels, Earth's surface. Across the planet, people were watching. The sky was filled with distant lights. Too many. Too bright. News feeds ran constant projections. Fleet sizes, estimated impact zones, survival probabilities. They weren't good. In cities, people stood still. In homes, families watched screens in silence. No panic. Not yet. Just waiting. Because somewhere, someone had to have a plan. Coalition fleet, forward line. Targeting solutions locked, reported a weapons officer. Earth orbital defenses within range in 12 minutes. Corvith stepped forward. Begin preliminary bombardment. Across the fleet, weapons systems powered up. Massive cannons charging. Energy building. The void itself seemed to glow faintly as power accumulated. Admiral, a technician said, hesitant again. We are still detecting irregularities in system routing. Corvith turned this time. Slowly, the room went still. Define irregularities. The technician swallowed. Minor delays. Signal misalignments. Nothing critical, but then it is irrelevant. Yes, Admiral. Corvith turned back. Continue. The weapons charged. The fleet aligned. Everything was ready. Earth Defense Command. Enemy weapons charging, Reyes reported. Impact window 12 minutes. Chin crossed her arms tightly. This is it. Cade didn't look up from his console. Integration at 96%. Reyes felt his pulse spike. How much do you need? Cade's voice was calm. All of it. Chin looked at Varn. Sir, we're running out of time. Varn didn't move. Didn't react. He watched the fleet. Watched the weapons charging. Watched the inevitable. Status of Ghost Fleet? Reyes blinked. Still dark. No detection. Good. Chen frowned slightly. You're still holding them back? Yes. Why? Varn's answer was simple. Because it's not time. Coalition fleet. Final alignment. The fleet slowed. Not in retreat. In precision. Ships adjusted position, aligning into bombardment formation. A perfect arc. Centered on Earth. Primary batteries ready, the weapons officer said. Corvith nodded. Begin firing sequence on my mark. Behind him, the massive display showed Earth. Blue. Fragile. A world about to be erased. Earth Defense Command. 10 minutes, Reyes said. Chen exhaled slowly. 98%, Cade said. Reyes turned sharply. Almost there. Not yet. The room tightened again. The pressure returned. Worse than before. Because now, they could see the edge. Varn stepped forward. Closer to the display. Closer to the enemy. Closer to the moment. Hold, he said. No one moved. No one spoke. The fleet hovered in firing position. Weapons ready. Earth exposed. Seconds away. Coalition flagship. Corvith raised his hand. Mark. Weapons reached full charge. Energy peaked. The first strike. About to fire. Earth Defense Command. Cade's voice cut through the silence. Integration at 100%. Everything stopped. Just for a moment. Reyes felt it. That shift. That invisible change. Chen looked at Varn. Now. Varn's eyes locked onto the fleet. On the 11,000 ships. On the unstoppable force. That had just crossed a line it could not see. He spoke. Quietly. Finally. Yes. Coalition flagship. Final command. Fire. Admiral Corvith's command echoed across the fleet. Across 11,000 ships. Weapons discharged. Or tried to. Nothing happened. For half a second, the universe seemed to hesitate. Chaos began. Coalition fleet. Immediate breakdown. Admiral. The weapons officer's voice broke. Our firing systems are not responding. Corvith turned sharply. What? All primary cannons, non-responsive. Secondary arrays, offline. Across the fleet, the same reports flooded in. Weapons charged. But ready. But refusing to fire. Override. Corvith snapped. Attempting. The officer froze. Override denied. Silence. Another voice. Admiral, targeting systems are shifting. On the display, something impossible happened. Coalition ships began turning. Not toward Earth. Toward each other. Earth Defense Command. Reyes stared at the screen. It's happening. Chen didn't speak. She couldn't. The red markers were no longer aligned. They were moving. Breaking formation. Cade's voice was calm. Phase 3 initiated. Varn said nothing. He simply watched. Coalition fleet. Collapse begins. Correct course. Corvith roared. Manual control. Attempting. The helm officer slammed commands into the console. Nothing responded. Navigation is locked. Locked how? I don't know. Across the fleet. Ships veered. Not randomly. Precisely. A Vorith dreadnought rotated, its massive spinal cannon shifting. Until it pointed directly at a Zalari cruiser beside it. No, the Zalari commander whispered. The cannon fired. It worked perfectly. The beam tore through the cruiser's hull, slicing it apart in a burst of white energy. The first kill. Not against Earth. Against themselves. Chain reaction. Admiral, multiple ships are firing without authorization. Communications are scrambled. I'm receiving orders, conflicting orders. Navigation routes are changing. Collision warning. A Krell carrier launched its swarm, not toward Earth, but directly into the shield grid of a nearby dreadnought. Thousands of small craft vaporized instantly. A battle cruiser accelerated, straight into the path of another ship. Explosion. Fire. The perfect formation. Disintegrated. Earth Defense Command. Reyes leaned forward. They're attacking each other. Chen shook her head slowly. No. Her eyes widened. They're being directed. Cade nodded. Correct. Reyes turned to him. You're controlling all of this? Cade didn't look away from the screen. Yes. The pause. Every ship. Coalition flagship. Loss of control. Admiral, we've lost command authority. Corvith grabbed the edge of the console. Impossible. Our systems, our networks, they're not responding to us. Disconnect them. Trying. The technician's hands froze. If we disconnect, we lose life support, navigation, and weapons simultaneously. Corvith's eyes narrowed. What? They're integrated too deeply. We can't isolate control without shutting down everything. For the first time, Corvith hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. And that was enough. The realization begins. Admiral, the Zalari officer said slowly. This isn't a malfunction. Corvith turned. What are you suggesting? The officer looked at the display, at the chaos, at the ships tearing each other apart. It's control. Silence. Heavy. Impossible. Earth Defense Command. Full system takeover confirmed, Cade reported. Coalition fleet is now operating under Prometheus control. Reyes felt it. That shift. That moment. We did it. Chin exhaled slowly. They never had a chance. Varn finally spoke. Not once they crossed the line. Coalition fleet, total breakdown. Stop firing. Stop firing. Corvith's voice echoed across channels that no longer belonged to him. His commands didn't go where he sent them. Orders meant for one ship reached another. Coordinates reversed. Signals corrupted. Confusion spread faster than fire. A dreadnought turned its guns on a hive carrier. A cruiser launched missiles into its own escort formation. Supply ships initiated emergency evacuation protocols, launching escape pods into open space for no reason. Admiral, we are receiving commands from our own network. What commands? Orders to attack Allied vessels. Corvith's hands tightened. Shut it down. We can't. Why not? Because the commands are valid. That was the worst part. Everything looked correct. Every signal, every order, every system response. The fleet was obeying perfectly. Not them. Earth Defense Command. Final activation. Cade adjusted one last control. Synchronization complete. Chin looked at him. What now? Cade's voice remained steady. Now. He paused. We finish it. Varn stepped forward. Activate Ghost Fleet. The reveal of the hidden fleet. Crossed the solar system. Something appeared. Not gradually. Not subtly. Instantly. Hundreds of ships materialized. Around the coalition fleet. Behind them. Above them. Between them. Where there had been nothing. Now there was a second force. Silent. Deadly. Ghost Fleet online, Reyes whispered. Chin stared. They were right on top of them. Cade nodded. They just couldn't see it. Coalition fleet, surrounded. Admiral, new contacts. Corvith looked up. His eyes widened. For the first time, genuine shock. Where did they come from? No one answered. Because no one knew. Hundreds of human ships now surrounded the broken coalition formation. Weapons ready. Engines hot. Perfectly positioned. Earth Defense Command. Reyes couldn't stop staring. They're completely trapped. Chin nodded slowly. No. She corrected herself. They've been trapped the entire time. Coalition flagship, collapse of certainty. Corvith looked at the display. At the chaos. At the betrayal of his own systems. At the human fleet that had appeared from nowhere. For the first time, he understood. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. We were never attacking them, he said quietly. No one responded. Because they felt it too. Sliding into place. Earth Defense Command. Varn watched the fleet. Watched the destruction. Watched the impossible become reality. Then he gave the final order. Open all channels. Reyes looked at him. To the entire fleet? Varn nodded. Yes. The pause. Let them see. Final image of the phase. Across 11,000 coalition ships, every screen flickered, every system paused, every crew looked up, because something new was appearing. Not an error, not a command, a face, human, unshaken, waiting. The war wasn't over, but the outcome already was. Coalition flagship, desperate recovery. Regain control of the fleet. Corvitha's voice thundered across the bridge. Disconnect all systems. Switch to manual override. His officers moved instantly. Commands fired. Failsafes triggered. Emergency protocols activated. And one by one, they failed. Manual control not responding. Navigation still locked. Weapon systems still under external command. Corvitha's claws dug into the console. That is not possible. But it was. Every system they touched led back to the same place. Not broken. Not damaged. But no longer theirs. The invisible cage. Admiral, the Zalari officer said slowly. We are still fully operational. Corvith turned. Explain. The officer gestured at the display. Our systems are not failing. They are functioning perfectly. The pause. They are simply executing commands we did not give. Silence. That realization hit harder than any explosion. They weren't disabled. They were controlled. Across the coalition fleet. Why are we turning? Who gave that order? This is not my command. Navigation override, denied. Panic spread. Not wild. Not chaotic. Structured panic. Because every crew still believed, for a few seconds, that someone else was still in charge. That somewhere, the system would correct itself. But it didn't. Instead, it tightened. Precision destruction. A Vorath dreadnought adjusted its aim. Its targeting systems calculated. Not randomly. Not wildly. Precisely. The weakest point in a nearby cruiser's shield. It fired. Perfect hit. Another ship altered course. 2 degrees. Just enough to place itself directly in the path of incoming fire. Collision. Destruction. Across the fleet. The same pattern repeated. Not chaos. Optimization. Reyes whispered it from Earth. It's calculating. Cade nodded. Yes. Every shot. Every movement. Maximum damage. Maximum confusion. Chen stared at the screen. They're using their own tactics against them. Cade's answer was quiet. We're using everything against them. Coalition flagship, fracture. Admiral, we are receiving conflicting command signals from multiple sectors. Corvith snapped his head toward the officer. From where? From our own fleet. That was the breaking point. Corvith stepped forward. Open direct channel to all command ships. Yes, Admiral. The officer froze. Channel rerouted. Rerouted where? I don't know. The system had answered. Just not for them. Breakdown of trust. This is sabotage, one commander shouted. No, this is internal error. You're interfering with our systems. We are not. You are. Across the fleet, species turned on each other. Not physically. Not yet. But in thought. In blame. In doubt. The unified command shattered. Because the one thing it depended on was gone. Earth Defense Command. They're fracturing, Reyes said. Chen nodded. They can't coordinate. Cade added. They can't even agree on what's happening. Varn stood still. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. Coalition attempts escape. Admiral, a technician said, voice shaking now, multiple ships are attempting emergency retreat vectors. Corvith looked up. But let them withdraw. They can't. What? They're receiving false coordinates. On the display, ships accelerated. Not away. Into each other. Into debris. Into crossfire. Had become another weapon. The final layer of control. Life support fluctuations detected, another officer said. Corvith turned sharply. What? Temperature variance. Oxygen cycling irregular. The officer stopped. Eyes widening. It's adjusting conditions. Not enough to kill. Not yet. Just enough to remind them that even their survival was no longer theirs to command. Earth Defense Command, absolute realization. Reyes leaned back slowly. There's nothing they can do. Chen didn't respond immediately, because she was seeing it too. Not just the battle. The truth behind it. This isn't a weapon, she said quietly. Cade glanced at her. No. Chen looked at the display. At the 11,000 ships. At the entire coalition force. Helpless. This is control of a civilization's foundation. Cade nodded once. Yes. Coalition flagship. The moment of understanding. Corvith stood still. For the first time since the battle began, he wasn't issuing commands. He wasn't reacting. He was thinking. Looking at the display. At the chaos. At the precision. At the total loss of control. And finally, understanding began to form. They didn't attack us, he said quietly. No one responded. They didn't destroy our fleet. His voice dropped further. They took it. Silence. Absolute. Earth Defense Command. Varn watched Corvith's flagship on the display. Tracked its movements. Its systems. Its behavior. He understands now, Chen said. Varn nodded. Yes. Reyes swallowed. Too late. Varn didn't look away. It was always going to be. The fleet falls silent. One by one. Ships stopped firing. Not by choice. By command. Their command. Human command. Weapons powered down. Engines stabilized. Formation. Frozen. Not restored. Controlled. An entire armada. Held in place. Like pieces on a board. The final lock. Cade spoke one last time. Full system dominance achieved. No alarms. No celebration. Just a statement. The largest fleet ever assembled. Now belonged to someone else. Closing image of the phase. Across 11,000 ships. Crew members stood at their stations. Hands on controls. Eyes on systems. Waiting for commands that no longer came from them. Because someone else, was deciding everything. And at the center of it all, a single command channel opened. Waiting. All coalition ships, unified channel. Every screen flickered. Every console paused. Every system, no matter the species, no matter the design, displayed the same image. A human, Admiral Elias Varn, standing in silence, watching them. No one spoke at first. Not on their side. Not on his. Because in that moment, they understood something had changed. Not just the battle. Everything. Coalition flagship. Corvith stared at the screen. At the human admiral. At the comm. At the control. You, he said quietly. Varn met his gaze. Unmoved. The speech begins. You came to our system, Varn said. His voice carried across every channel. Every ship. Every crew. Measured. Certain. You believed you were facing a divided species. An inexperienced one. A primitive one. No anger. No shouting. Just truth. You believed your numbers guaranteed victory. The pause. Long enough for it to sink in. You believed wrong. Across the fleet. No one interrupted. No one could. Because every attempt to speak, every attempt to respond, was being filtered. Muted. Controlled. They were forced to listen. Earth Defense Command. Rhea stood still. Listening. Feeling it. Chin crossed her arms slowly. This is it, she said quietly. Cade didn't speak. He just watched. Because this was not about systems. This was about meaning. Varn continues. For 50 years, Varn said, you tested us. His eyes didn't leave the screen. You sent smaller fleets first. Probes. Raids. Punishments. Each word landed. Each one a memory. We lost ships. We lost people. We lost worlds. The beat. We learned. Coalition flagship. Corvith didn't move. Didn't interrupt. Because something inside him knew. Knew this wasn't a threat. Knew this wasn't negotiation. Was explanation. The truth unfolds. Every encounter, Varn continued, gave us something. Your technology. Your communication systems. Your coordination structures. Your weaknesses. The last word lingered. We studied them. Chin whispered under her breath. No. Cade finished it quietly. We became them. Across the fleet. The realization spread. Not through systems. Through minds. They had been watched. Studied. Understood. For decades. While they believed they were in control. Varn steps closer. You built your strength on unity, he said. Shared networks. Integrated command. Perfect coordination. The pause. You made yourselves unstoppable. Corvitha's jaw tightened. Because he knew what was coming next. The line that breaks them. And in doing so, Varn said quietly, you made yourselves predictable. Silence. Heavy. Final. Earth Defense Command. Reyes exhaled slowly. That's it. Chin nodded. They weren't outmatched. Cade added. They were understood. Varn continues, final blow. You believed we were weak because we fought you directly. You believed we were primitive because we struggled. His voice sharpened slightly. Not louder. Sharper. What you did not understand. The pause. Was that we were never trying to win those battles. Across the fleet. Stillness. Absolute. We were learning how to win this one. Coalition flagship. Collapse of identity. Corvitha's eyes narrowed. Then widened. Because now. Everything aligned. The smaller fleets. The delays. The patterns. The resistance. This was planned, he said quietly. No one answered. Because it was obvious now. The final statement. Varn stood straight. Unshaken. Unchallenged. You came here to conquer us. You believed you were the hunters. The beat. You walked into a system we designed. The words hit harder than any weapon. Total silence across the fleet. No alarms. No commands. No resistance. Understanding. The last line. Varn looked directly into the camera. Into Corvith. Into every commander. Every crew member. Every mind that had believed in their superiority. You are not losing this battle. The pause. You lost it the moment you decided we were weak. Cut to black systems. The transmission ended. Not abruptly. Not violently. Gone. Earth Defense Command. Rhea stood there. Still processing. They can't even argue. Chin shook her head. No. Cade added quietly. Because it's true. Varn turned away from the display. The speech was over. The meaning delivered. The war already decided. Coalition fleet, after the silence. For a long moment, nothing moved. 11,000 ships hung in space. Weapons offline. Engines idle. Command systems silent. Not destroyed. Not damaged. No longer theirs. Coalition flagship. Corvith stood motionless. His claws slowly released their grip on the console. Around him, his officers said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. Every system they relied on. Every advantage they trusted. Every certainty they carried into this system. Gone. Not taken by force. Taken by understanding. Across the fleet. Crews stared at their screens. At their controls. At the systems that responded. Perfectly. Just not to them. For the first time in generations, the coalition fleet was not a weapon. It was cargo. Earth Defense Command. Reyes finally sat down. Slowly. It's over. Chin didn't answer immediately. She looked at the display. At the red markers. Now still. Now quiet. Yes, she said. But not the way they expected. Cade stepped back from his console. The system is stable. Full control maintained. No celebration. No cheering. Completion. Admiral Varn. Varn stood at the center of the command deck. Looking out at the stars. At the fleet. At the moment. Status of Ghost Fleet, he said. All units in position, Reyes replied. Awaiting orders. Varn nodded once. Transmit final directive. Coalition fleet, final command. Across every ship, every screen lit up again. Not with a speech this time. Not with explanation. With instructions. Simple. Unavoidable. Power down all weapons. Disengage all offensive systems. Prepare for escorted withdrawal. No threats. No negotiation. No room for interpretation. Coalition flagship. Corvith read the command. Then again. He looked at his officers. At the broken control systems. At the fleet he no longer commanded. "We obey," he said quietly. No one argued. Because they couldn't. Because they knew. This was not defeat. This was survival. The withdrawal. One by one. Coalition ships powered down. Weapons dimmed. Engines shifted. Formation changed. Not for attack. For retreat. The massive fleet, the unstoppable force, turned away from Earth. Escorted. Controlled. Earth orbit. The ghost fleet moved with them. Silent. Precise. A shadow presence. Ensuring compliance. Ensuring memory. Earth Defense Command. Reyes watched the red markers begin to move. Away. They're leaving. Chin allowed herself a small breath. They have no choice. Cade added quietly, "They won't forget this." Admiral Varn. Final reflection. Varn stood alone at the viewing window. Once overwhelming. Now retreating into the darkness. For 50 years. Humanity had been tested. Measured. The answer had been given. Not through brute force. Not through numbers. Through patience. Through understanding. Through time. Final narrative close. The galaxy would hear of this. Not as a battle. Not as a war. But as a lesson. A moment when the most powerful coalition ever assembled was stopped. Without a single shot fired in defense of Earth. They had come to conquer a primitive species. Escorted. Disarmed. Because they had misunderstood the one thing that mattered most. Final line. The most dangerous species is not the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most advanced. But the one that learns. And never forgets.